He's lean, he's mean. And for the first 21 Columbo episodes, he was the only actor to repeat as a murderer. Unlike other killers, he combines his intelligence with an animal savagery that adds a unique electric tension to his exchanges with the lieutenant. So why did the defining villain of the series disappear after season 3? Today on Echoes of Columbo,
all right, let's get this farce over with.
We investigate Robert Culp, a study in fury. Let's do the Columbo recurring killer roll call. Shatner and Hamilton with 2, Cassidy and Culp with 3, and McGoohan with 4. Eliminate the 2 first and you've got the classic series conversation starter. Who's your favorite? For many years, my answer, no hesitation, Culp.
Well, you're very perceptive.
There's just something about this guy. He's so cool.
He's not due for another 30 seconds.
Well, I mean, he's mostly cool. A Robert Culp character is tough and self-assured, cerebral, as any Columbo killer must be, and exuding a sense of danger right from the start, like our first glimpse of him blazing away with 2 pistols at once. His first role is the first season's 2nd episode, Death Lends a Hand. Here he plays Mr. Brimmer, who like Columbo has no first name, a private investigator who kills an influential client's wife in a fit of anger and then gets himself assigned to the case. Culp's 2nd appearance is the 2nd season's 3rd episode, the most crucial game. He's chronically enraged as football general manager Paul Hanlon.
No, I want that watchman fired!
Who murders the team's owner in what we presume is his lust for power and possibly his lust for the victim's wife. His 3rd and final starring role is the 3rd season's 4th entry, Double Exposure, where he gives his signature performance as Dr. Bart Keppel, a motivational research scientist who kills the client he's trying to blackmail, and then kills a guy who's trying to blackmail him. Culp is unique among all recurring Columbo villains in that he pops up again in a non-murderous role, a glorious turn as the killer's father, attorney Jordan Rowe, in Columbo Goes to College. He's just as hostile as ever.
It's perfectly clear that you haven't the faintest idea which end is up here.
And it's kind of fun that Columbo seems to recognize him and instantly suspects him of being the murderer, asking him for an alibi on the way out. And let's not forget, although many probably want to, that Culp appeared as a villain in the 1979 first episode of Mrs. Columbo, Word Games. Attorney Charles Houston hires a man to murder his wife, but the guy is a real psycho and ends up killing him too. Fans of the channel already know that in 1987, Culp starred in a memorably Columbo-esque episode of Jake and the Fat Man as the once again murderous lawyer Harrison Gregg, guy with 2 first names. This is the 3rd time he would play a lawyer in Columbo and Columbo-adjacent media. It's crazy to think that Culp's 3 starring outings were over before Jack Cassidy even made his 2nd appearance. For those early years of Columbo, Culp was the murderer. He was so tied to the show that he's the co-star of Mad Magazine's Columbo parody, appearing as Robert Culpable. It's tantalizing that he had so much time to make a 4th or even 5th starring appearance, and I've never been able to discover exactly why he didn't.
Well, you're a little less perceptive than I thought.
Surely there were opportunities. You can see echoes of the Culp style in killers like well-dressed spy Nelson Brenner, so similar to Brimmer in Season 5's Identity Crisis. How about the traitorous Frank Braley of Grand Deceptions? Remember when you think his alibi is about to be blown?
Frank? Frank?
Just like Paul Hanlon's?
All right, Mr. Hanlon. Paul?
The scene of Braley removing his murder getup even echoes Hanlon donning his own disguise. While McGoohan was smooth and erudite and Cassidy had his sneering condescension, Culp's characters have a mean streak, a snarling, wolf-like anger to complement their brains. All his performances have this barely suppressed rage. Brimmer's volatile temperament is central to his character.
It's going to turn out that he has a terrible temper.
Even more so with Paul Hanlon, who barely has a pleasant word for anybody.
What are you talking about? No calls today. I don't have time. Get this straight. Columbo, I'm trying to watch this game. What is that?
Even Keppel shows signs of flying off the handle, seething at Columbo on the golf course.
Everyone in the room swore they saw me there. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
Has someone changed their testimony?
No, sir.
No, they haven't.
You get the impression that any scene where he's being patient, smiling, or laughing is an exhausting performance for him, that the glare and the snarl are his natural look. There's the idea that Columbo is in just a bit of peril in these episodes,
Struck her like this.
that a Culp killer is this close to losing control.
Columbo, I'm gonna throw you out of here on your ear.
It creates an intriguing and physical dynamic, one no actor quite manages to duplicate. Brimmer, Hanlon, and Keppel may have personal lives, but we get almost no idea what they might be. Bart Keppel mentions he's married, but that's about it.
I am married.
These guys are aloof and mysterious, dangerous men with no attachment save themselves. Every Culp killing is somehow tied to his work.
He's a man devoted to his work.
They don't seem motivated by money so much as the drive to succeed and dominate in their chosen profession.
It's for your dad, remember? Biggest sports empire in the world.
This is carried through even in Culp's non-murderous appearance, where Jordan Rowe is obsessed with his university's reputation and his son's future prestige.
He's going to wind up the best criminal attorney in this country, or I'm going to break every bone in his body.
Aside from that trademark rage, Culp's performances are unified by little acting tricks he uses, like how his speech gets halting and jerky the more impatient he gets.
Yes, I met you there.
More specifically, about his books.
As you wish. All right, let's make that assumption.
Visiting with his brother, the security guard.
He also does the Stewie Griffin Cool Whip thing, which is a delight to the ear.
So what?
Second book on white-collar crime.
That's peculiar.
What is peculiar?
He wears a vest and tie combo in each of his murderous outings, and he does it in Mrs. Columbo too. Brimmer and Keppel appear in suspiciously similar outfits: green blazer, beige slacks, red tie, striped shirt.
That's not my problem, is it?
And Hanlon wears a very similar outfit, with slight variations.
No, sir. That's my problem.
His characters all have a private bar set up, in Brimmer's house, in Hanlon's booth, in Keppel's office, and he's always interacting with the spouse of his murder victim, Mr. Kennicott, Mrs. Wagner, Mrs. Norris. All three of his killings involve proximity to water: Mrs. Kennicott at the beach,
She will love it at the beach.
Vic Norris at the drinking fountain, Eric Wagner in the pool. And doesn't Wagner's slow-motion plunge mirror Mrs. Kennicott's fall into the table?
And this is how you've been spending your time.
Despite these similarities, Culp's 3 episodes lack the pure thematic unity of the Jack Cassidy Trinity. And that's not a bad thing. His characters are actually more distinct, each with their own particular style. Brimmer is buttoned down and professional, but kind of folksy.
This one is as crooked as a dog's hind leg.
And he wears eyeglasses, a rarity for a Columbo killer. Hanlon has a grotesque mustache and favors more casual attire. He also lacks any of the charm we associate with the show's villains.
All right, Lieutenant.
A brutal and unlikable individual. Keppel has his sweep of gray hair and amazing pinstripe suit, and Culp gives him a more clipped intellectual delivery befitting a guy who insists on being called Doctor.
I'm sorry to bother you again, Mr. Keppel.
Dr. Keppel, come in.
Notice how Keppel's grinning downfall
You'll have to admit, you never would have solved it without using my technique.
is an interesting echo of Ken Franklin's ironic defeat.
You gotta admit I had you going for a while now, didn't I? That is my idea.
Columbo's last words in the last Culp episode
Officer.
echo his last words in the last Cassidy episode.
Officer.
And Ken Franklin's house is where Paul Hanlon hangs out too. The overall quality of Culp's 3 episodes are also not on the same level as Cassidy's.
I'm so sorry to hear it. Why not?
Death Lends a Hand, while excellent, suffers from the fact that the murder is an accident and Brimmer never kills again, or even frames someone else for the crime, so it's hard not to sympathize with the guy. Double Exposure is one of the all-time greats, and Culp's performance here ranks among the very best. There's a double murder, great showdowns with Columbo, this one has it all. But the most crucial game is a bit of a stinker in comparison.
Not a bad one, huh, Doc?
Yes, that's a bad one.
Having some standout scenes, but ultimately never paying off on the promise of its stellar cast and intriguing setup. Perhaps that's why these days Culp's contributions to the series seem almost undervalued. Or maybe it's because he vanishes so abruptly after season 3. And while it's a delight to see him appear in a revival episode, he was clearly still capable of being a headliner, so having him in a supporting role is bittersweet. Culp also frequently wrote and or directed episodes of shows he worked on. Why didn't he have the opportunity to do this with Columbo, as Patrick McGoohan did?
Maybe he didn't want to.
The explanation may be that he didn't endear himself to the production team. As quoted in David Koenig's Shooting Columbo, prolific producer Dean Hargrove thought that Culp was the perfect example of what a Columbo villain should be, but added that he was as unpleasant in life as he was on screen.
That's not an insult, it's a statement of fact.
But in fairness fairness to Culp, this is the only kind of criticism I could find leveled at him. In fact, he's universally praised by other creators he worked with. So perhaps Culp and Hargrove just didn't hit it off. Whatever the reason, his particular brand of murderer was impossible to replace. He brought a slick, dangerous allure to his characters, his class and style inextricably tied with those early 70s episodes when the show was at its peak. So if I was asked today, would I still say Robert Culp is my favorite recurring killer?
I haven't the vaguest notion.
It's a tough call, but, well, you be the judge.
I hope the association will be beneficial to you.
Oh, I'm sure it will. Yeah.